I'm Michelle, and we're going to talk about how I and you can use mindfulness, compassion, and connection to find your inner calm and a little more sanity in your parenting. Sibling fighting. When I see my kids fighting, it's hard not to get caught in reactive anger and just try to shut it down at any cost. These are the people I love most in the world, and I am in charge of keeping them safe. So when they go at each other, it's painful. In reactive anger, I yelled, pulled people apart, separated them angrily and harshly. None of it felt great or seemed very helpful. Other times, I tried to intervene calmly, but if the fighting continued, I felt hopeless and powerless on the inside. On the outside, I became increasingly angry and frustrated. It was difficult to bounce back as well. My kids fighting and my reaction to it could easily ruin dinner or an outing together. They got over it and moved on, and I was still consumed by feelings of powerlessness. I brought my frustration to my listening partner and the play collective group I'm a part of to try and better understand my own reactions. What I realized was the worst moment for me is if I tried and it wasn't immediately better, I felt like I was failing and I felt powerless to stop the fighting. Examining the situation further, I realized how unrealistic it is to assume that anything I do would get rid of the fighting and stop it on a dime. I also saw my efforts were half-hearted because I was pretty sure they were going to fail. Essentially, I was setting myself up to fail to stop the fighting, then feeling shitty because my efforts didn't work. I needed a new perspective. What if I assumed no matter how awesome of a parent I am, no matter how connected or how much connected parenting I do, my kids will still fight? This seems more realistic. Siblings fight. My response can have a positive or negative impact, but I can never eradicate sibling fighting completely. This is a huge relief. My kids will fight. It is not my job to ensure that they never fight. It's impossible. It's not a personal failure on my part if they are fighting. It's normal and it sucks. I can do a lot to ensure my kids have good relationship. I can intervene calmly and set loving limits to keep everyone safe. There is a lot I can do, but extinguish sibling fighting is probably just not one of those things. Something I use to uncover is that my kids fighting lands differently for me based on how I feel. If I am in a good place internally, it's easier to redirect them and move on. If I'm on edge, their fighting becomes the last straw and all of my stress combusts for a potential explosion on them. I also saw an important pattern that led to the spiral of despair. If I was on edge and tried to intervene playfully or calmly and it didn't work, then I'd go into the spiral of despair where I believed I was failing and this is hopeless extra fast. It was empowering to see these patterns. Now I had a clear way to avoid the despair spiral. I developed a new approach when I was struggling internally and close to my edge. If no one was in physical danger, I'd give myself permission to take a break in another room versus intervening when it was unlikely to go well. If my cup is full and my emotional backpack is light, I can intervene with playfulness or a loving limit. I want to send the signal this is not okay and it needs to stop. With a calmer mind and nervous system, I could think clearly, focusing more on what my children needed and how best to respond. My reactive anger only added fuel to the fire. Responding from a place of calm was empowering for me because I felt more effective as a parent, and how I intervened was also much more likely to be successful. Sometimes, although rarely, when I had the bandwidth to be playful, I would access my creativity to intervene with sibling fighting. I would do silly things to shift the mood and focus by walking into the room with underwear on my head. I would just act totally normal, and when they said something about the underwear on my head, I pretended I didn't know what they were talking about. Or I would turn on some music and dance crazy like no one was watching. Thought for the day. Our kids' behaviors can be very triggering, especially when it's a reoccurring hurtful behavior like sibling fighting. We may want to 100% focus on them and what's happening with them and why they are fighting, which can be helpful. I have found it equally helpful to see what's happening for me in these moments. You can begin to ask yourself, where am I getting stuck? What big feelings am I having? And what do I need? When and if you are in a bad place, it's unlikely you will be able to set a loving or playful limit. What's happening inside of you will spill all over the situation if you are struggling. It will be like pouring gasoline on a fire. Quick win. What can you do instead? Write 3 ways you know you are close to your edge: tense, rigid, exhausted. Now write 3 things you can do instead of intervene when you see your kids fighting that will support you in the moment, assuming no one is getting physically hurt. Text a friend funny, angry emojis. Use the rage break audio, take a shower. What calms you and feels comforting? You've got this. You are doing a great job. I'd love to hear what ideas you use to recalibrate. Thanks for listening.